All right, we're going to start chapter 35. I have broken it up into 3 parts. My goal is to get through fishes, but we'll see. We'll just take it by ear. So we're done with protostomes, where the mouth forms first. Now we're moving on to deuterostomes, where the mouth forms second and the butt forms first. And there are only 2 phylums that are considered deuterostomes, and that is the Echinoderms and then your chordates. So the Echinoderms is going to be covered in the first section, and then the rest of it is all about the chordates. Okay. So Echinoderms, talk about some characteristics of them, their symmetry, and then just kind of briefly go through the 5 classes of the Echinoderms. So first off, deuterostome development, and they have an internal skeleton. So yesterday we wrapped up arthropods. We did finish arthropods, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. And they had an exoskeleton. They wore their skeleton on the outside. Here the skeleton is on the inside the organism. So echinoderm means spiny skin because they have some calcium plates beneath a skin layer. And some examples of echinoderms: sea stars, brittle stars, sea urchins, sand dollars, sea cucumbers. Another unique characteristic of the echinoderm is this pentaradial symmetry. So they are radially symmetrical as adults, but it's a pentaradial symmetry. Okay, echinoderms have been around for a really long time, and you can't mistake them for something else. There's about 12,000 living species today. One unique feature that they share is a water vascular system, basically a hydraulic system that they use to move. So it starts off with the Modraporite, which you'll see when you dissect your starfish. Water will fuse into the central canals, travel down the lateral canals to the tube feet, and just kind of using water to contract and move their arms. And so with deuterostomes, I mean, yeah, we talked about how like the rest of the organisms are bilateral. Well, echinoderms, they are bilateral in their larva stage, but then when they reach adults, they have the pentaradial symmetry. So because of the pentaradial symmetry, we really can't use the term dorsal, ventral, anterior, or posterior because they don't really have a head. So orientation during starfish dissection will pertain to the oral surface. Where is the mouth located? Versus the oboral surface. So the oral surface means you're looking at the side of the mouth, and then the oboral surface means the opposite side of the mouth. Each arm is pretty much the same as the other arms, and you'll see that when you cut into your starfish. So you might have to cut open a couple different arms to make sure that you see everything, just in case you damage it. But everything radiates out from the center. So again, endoskeleton, delicate epidermis, lots of neurosensory cells that stretch over it. The calcite plates that are just underneath the skin are made up of ossicles. The ossicles can be scattered widely, and if they are, then these organisms would be extremely flexible, like sea stars, sea cucumbers. But if they are fused, then there'll be a hard, rigid shell, so sea urchins and sand dollars. I'm sure you've seen a sand dollar. Yeah, okay. I think I have one in the back. I'll just grab it while you're typing.
I think that like break the sand dollar, it's like valve-shaped pieces inside it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and then the tube feet that are on the mouth surface, they extend through pores, and it's part of that water vascular system that I showed you on the previous slide. But just showing a cross-section of these calcium plates, the ossicles, and if they're like fused together, you know, it's almost like heavy-duty armor. If not, they're spread out. It's still given protection and rigidity, but more flexible. Showing, again, the Modraporite, where water will flow in, down through the 2 feet, and dependent on the pressure of it, that's how the organism moves. And you can also see these tiny little spines, because echinoderm means spiny skin. All right, so moving into the water vascular system more in depth here. It starts with Modraporite, flows down to the stone tube, and then it will extend out into the hollow tube feet. Now at the base of each tube feet is something called an ampulla. And depending on whether this ampulla contracts or releases, that's how it moves. So I think I have a slide that describes what happens when it contracts, what happens when it releases. So again, just another diagram going through. This is the stone canal connecting the Modraporite to the ring canal, and then it radiates down. So when it contracts, fluid doesn't enter the radial canal by the one-way valve. It's forced into the tube feet and it extends out. When it relaxes, fluid flows back into the ampulla and pulls the body towards the foot. Okay, they do have a body cavity, so they are considered coelomites or coelomates. Oops. It's very, very large, kind of hollow, and you'll see that when you open up your starfish. They can regenerate and reproduce. Wait a few more minutes. Everyone got it? Okay. Through lost body parts. So as a result, it ends up as asexual reproduction, but most do reproduce sexually and externally. So we have different sexes. Gametes get released into the water where fertilization occurs. Fertilized eggs develop into the larvae. Those larvae are bilateral, and then when they reach maturity, they are now pentaradial. Okay, final section, going through the 5 classes of Echinoderms. So we have the Asteriorida, or Asteridia, sea stars, starfish, sea daisies. So probably what you are more familiar with. Holothuridia, sea cucumbers, these guys right here. Echinodea, those are your sea urchins and sand dollars. Echinodea, sea lilies, feather stars, and then 5th class, Ophiuridia, your brittle stars, which are similar to the Asteridia, but they are a lot thinner and way more flexible than the Asteridia. So just some more pictures showing the 5 classes. So sea stars or starfish, very important predator in the marine ecosystem, very abundant in the tidal zones from the low tides and the high tides, but we have found them up to 10,000 meters in depth. Body's flattened, flexible, and covered with pigment epidermis. And you'll see that, hopefully, if the starfish come. So I just placed the order, but for some reason, starfish always seem to be on back order. So, you know, just if we don't get to them, we don't get to them. What? Oh, as soon as we're done with chapter 35 and test out on it with 33 and 34. So we're looking at maybe within 2 weeks. Brittle Stars, largest class. Secretive, they tend to avoid light, more active at night, and their arms are way more slender, as you saw in that cartoon diagram. But they are also the most mobile. They tend to kind of swim. They have 5 arms, but they lack the ampulla, and they don't really have suckers, so they can't adhere to surfaces like big starfish can. So that's why we tend to see them kind of floating with the ocean current a bit. Okay, and then the other class, because I'm not going to cover all of them, so I'm just going to go through 3 of them. Echinodea, sea urchins and sand dollars. No arms, but they are pentaradial when you take a look at them from the top. 5 rows of tube feet. They have calcareous skeleton, spines that protrude out. And again, they are also well preserved in the fossil record. So I came across this image on the web, and I'm like, wow, like, this is awesome. Because they tied it into SpongeBob. So, you know, we started off with Paraphora, and then we hit the flatworms. And then I think we went mollusca, annelids, and then we hit nematoda, arthropods, and now we just finished Echinoderms. So now we are venturing into chordata. So, review questions. The nearest relative of chordates is
E or B?
D, Echinoderms. Which of these statements is true about Echinoderms? B, yep. Echinoderms show pentaradial symmetry, but they are thought to have evolved from bilateral symmetrical ancestors. What is the evidence for this? What's the who's bilateral in their life cycle?
C.
Yeah, it's C, the larvae. All right, chordates. What does it mean to be a chordate? Yeah, basically. All right, so there is a difference between echinoderms and chordates. So they both have an internal skeleton, but with the echinoderms, they kind of had the hard shell that encases those muscles. Chordates, we have the internal skeleton, but we see a feature where we kind of have everything attached to a flexible rod. So think of it as like your spinal cord in a way, that flexible rod in us, how everything kind of attaches to our core. So this is the evolutionary path of truly large animals, because now we have an anchor point that they can all attach to. They are deuterostomes, coelomates. You'll see body cavities. The nearest relative is the echinoderm, because echinoderms are the only other deuterostome. So we will begin our journey eventually with fishes, and then we'll jump to amphibians, reptiles, birds, and mammals, and kind of tell the story of how, again, life starts in the water, what were some adaptations that they had to overcome to live on land, and so on and so forth. So you need 4 characteristics in order to be considered a chordate, and I have them bolded and underlined here. First off, a nerve cord. Okay, it runs on the back side. That's what dorsal means, beneath the surface of the animal. In vertebrates, it's your brain and spinal cord. Flexible rod, the notochord, again, on the dorsal side. It's got to be present at some developmental stage in all chordates. Sometimes it disappears in some species, but maybe some point in their development it's there and then maybe it disappears, or it's not there and then it appears. Pharyngeal slits or pharyngeal pouches, basically connecting the pharynx with the external environment. So you can kind of think of these terms as almost the same, okay? But pharyngeal pouches are present in all vertebrate embryos. Chordates also have a post-anal tail that extends beyond the anus, at least during embryonic development, and then it may disappear, maybe go through apoptosis. So humans, as embryos, we have pharyngeal pouches, and it turns into our eustachian tubes and part of our lymph nodes up here. We have a dorsal nerve cord. We did have a post-anal tail, but it turns into our tailbone, so that's the remnant of it. As adults, our nerve cord remains. The notochord is replaced by the vertebral column. So, yeah. So just a diagram showing the four. They're boxed here in white. So there are some non-vertebrate chordates out there. So chordata is broken up into three kind of subphylas: Urochorda, Cephalochorda, and then the vertebrates or vertebrata. So the Urochorda is made up of something called tunicates, and celps. Marine species, immobile as adults. Their larvae is where they pretty much find all the characteristics, but then as they reach adult stage, they lose some of them, the notochord and the nerve cord. Okay, so just a diagram showing you what in the world do tunicates and celps look like here. So tunicates right here. We have a incurrent siphon where it comes in, excurrent comes out. Here's the pharynx with numerous slits and also covered with cilia. And then this is the larval stage where it exhibits all four characteristics of a chordate, but then loses them in its adult form. Second subphylum is Cephalochorda or chordata. Lancelets are what make up the Cephalochordata. So there's only about 30 species. Shallow marine waters. The notochord runs the entire length, persists throughout the animal's life, and they tend to bury themselves with their anterior portion extruding out. So recent molecular evidence suggests that maybe lancelets are the closest relatives of the vertebrates, which is what we'll jump into in the next section, vertebrate chordates. All right, review question, true or false? Non-vertebrate, sorry, yes, no, it's not false. Non-vertebrate chordates have notochords but no vertebrae or bones. That's true. Which of the following is not one of the principal features of chordates? B, vertebral column, because they don't have vertebrates. Okay. Which of the following is considered the closest relative of the vertebrates?
The lancelets.
Yeah, the lancelets, yeah. C. All right, so the third subphylum of chordata is the vertebrate chordates. So they have a distinct head as well as some other features that you need to be aware of. A vertebral column. So that notochord becomes the vertebral column. This column can be made of bone or cartilage. So when you dissect your sharks, they are cartilage, okay? And that kind of makes it tricky to get to some parts of the shark because you literally have to chip the cartilage away. And then they also have a head, and this head is filled with sensory organs, usually 3 pairs of well-developed organs, and then a brain encased by a skull, which again can be bone or cartilage. They also differ in a few other aspects. The neural crest. So the neural crest is basically a group of embryonic cells that contribute to some of these vertebrate structures that I just talked about. And what happens is that we get an invagination that occurs, and that forms the neural tube, where it might turn into the vertebral column or the nerve cord. All vertebrates have heart, a closed circulatory system, liver, kidneys, and endocrine glands. They also have an endoskeleton, again, could be cartilage or bone. So you'll see that as we dissect. So just another diagram showing the neural crest and then how it can turn into the vertebral column. So the first vertebrates evolved during the Cambrian period. Probably shaped like a flattened hot dog with a mouth at one end and a fin at the other. And then we started to see jaws develop. And so now we have diverse food gathering options. Then our amphibians invaded the land, which gave rise to our reptiles. And then from the reptiles, birds evolved, as well as mammals. So we have this branch here, reptiles. Yes, some reptiles evolved into mammals. But please keep in mind that fish and reptiles are paraphyletic, and you'll see evidence for that. So dinosaurs, which were considered reptiles, and mammals did coexist. Dinos obviously dominated, and then when they got wiped out 65 million years ago, then it gave rise to the mammals. The reason why reptiles are paraphyletic to fish is because reptiles are more closely related to birds than they are to fish. And there are some fish that are more closely related to other birds. Review question: what is the proper name for the bony or cartilaginous segments that make up the spine? B, vertebrae. Yeah, vertebrates are the organisms that have that. Select the statement that is not true concerning the neural crest.
Great question.
Oh yeah, great question. What'd you say?
D.
Oh no,
D.
it is B.
I said B.
True or false? Some fish are more closely related to other vertebrates. That is true.
1 for 4.
Select the distinguishing characteristics of vertebrae chordates.
E.
B.
Wait, no. Wait.
Do they have an open circulatory system?
They close.
It's an exoskeleton.
No, they don't have it. It's
A.
Oh, wait, no, never mind.
A.
It's D, the neural crest.
I saw
D.
bony or cartilaginous. I said
Yep. So it says distinguishing characteristics. So notochords are found in our unvertebrate organisms. Bony or cartilaginous exoskeleton. They're trying to trick you there. Open or closed circulatory system. They're all closed, so it's D. Okay, fishes. Oof. Yeah, we're moving. So I'm going to be spending a lot of time over here. I'm going to start with our jawless fish, or hagfish. Move on to some lampreys, and then we'll hit the conrictes, which are our sharks, and then ray-finned fishes, lobed-finned fishes, and how lobed-finned fishes are the transition to amphibians. And we'll talk about amphibians tomorrow.
and then gorillas.
And then gorillas. Yeah. Okay, so our simple fish were just jawless and probably toothless. You can think of them as mini vacuum cleaners, or just having their mouth open and just swimming around in the ocean trying to take in whatever it can. They were the only vertebrates during the Ordovician period, but then by the end we started to see some primitive fins and shields for protection, and then our jawed fishes appeared in the Silurian period.
Is that one that eats krill? It's a whale.
Yeah, what about it?
Aren't they the vacuum cleaners?
Yeah, they have jaws.
But they have jaws though.
They have jaws.
Yeah. So 5 key characteristics that make a fish, a vertebral column, either bone or cartilaginous. I think it's cartilaginous. It surrounds their nerve cord, and then their skull protects their brain. There are 2 exceptions: the hagfish and the lampreys. So hagfish, cartilaginous skulls present, vertebrae is not. Lampreys, cartilaginous skeleton, notochord is present, but they have some rudimentary vertebrae that surround the notochord in some places. Okay, second characteristic, jaws and paired appendages. With the development of jaws, now they can capture larger prey and become more active. 2 pairs of fins, pectoral and the pelvic. Again, exceptions, hagfish and lampreys. Internal gills, how water will flow through mouths and across those gills so they can extract oxygen dissolved in the water. Single loop circulation, and it's pretty simple. Heart to gills to the rest of the body, back to the heart. And you'll see when you dissect your perch how the heart is just basically a muscular tube. Two chambers, atria, atrium, and atria, ventricle, and that's it. And then nutritional deficiencies. So they can't make aromatic amino acids. That's what AA stands for. And these are 3 really, really big ones. So they have to consume them. And the only way you can consume them is by eating other things. And this is something that all vertebrates share. All right, so here is the story of our first fishes. Again, no jaws, just a mouth that took in food. And 2 groups, okay? One that is still present today and one that has basically become extinct. So Agnathia is one that's still alive today, hagfish, and lampreys. So class Mixnici, and then I'm just done. Not saying it. Just not saying it. And then the Ostracoderms, big in the Ordovician and Silurian periods, but then became extinct during the Devonian period. There was a massive extinction, if I'm not mistaken, on that one, where like 90% of all life was wiped out on that one. These guys were bottom dwellers. They had head shields made of bone, kind of made them heavy, and that's why they kind of were bottom dwellers. So these nerd glasses means that I'm just going to dive into hagfishes because they are quite unique. I don't know if you know, if you've ever seen a hagfish. This is what a hagfish looks like. Eel-like scavengers, long, vermivore, and they tend to exclude a sticky slime. Another unique thing about hagfish, they tie themselves in knots to kind of clean excess slime off them. And then they also use knots to basically rip their meal to shred it because they don't really have jaws, right? So they kind of coil around it and chop up their food so they can consume it. They do have some type of tooth-like projections, and they tend to enter both living and dead fish and feed on the insides. So another diagram cross-section just showing the pores of this mucus. Yeah, actually, I'm just going to show it to you. Do you guys want to see it again? I think you might have already seen this.
I remember the video. It's like really sticky, right?
Yeah, super, super sticky.
Now it's recording. We have 180 seconds. Okay, yeah.
Oh, hold on here.
So I'm collecting some slime.
Yeah, I am.
Yeah, let me see. Oh, yeah. Gonna mix it.
Yep, so he just took a small amount of slime.
Mixing apparatus. Let me hold it up. Yeah, back off a bit. Wait a minute. Well, okay, go for it.
All water is just slime.
And the entire beaker. Wait a minute. It is empty. Turn the beaker upside down and pour it out. Nothing.
So you can imagine what would happen if some,
Fish.
fish thought that, oh, I have a nice little snack here, and all of a sudden they bite, and that slime gets in, and they actually suffocate and die, and now the hagfish is like, ha, meal for me. So, yeah, don't mess around with hagfish. Oops, okay. Okay, so moving on to now our jawfishes. So it occurred in the late Silurian period, and the thing about, like the evolution of new body parts is, they don't just appear. It doesn't poof appear all of a sudden, now we have animals with jaws. It has to come from something it already has, all right? And so they probably evolved from the arch supports for their gills, okay? These side arch supports made of cartilage, and the ones towards the front turned into the jaws, and now we start to see new lines of adaptation. So with jaws, again, now we can adapt a predatory lifestyle instead of being a scavenger, movement to new habitats, breeding sites, protection because they can fight back. And now with jaws, maybe enhanced ventilation, just because you can keep that mouth open, you can control the movement, and now you have higher metabolic needs because you can actively hunt, basically. So our placoderms, our armored fishes, as well as our spiny fishes called Echinodea, both had jaws. And the spiny fish replaced the ostracoderms at the end of the Permian. And the placoderms, the ones with heavy, heavy heads, were common in the mid-Devonian period. So placoderms are armored fishes, dominated during the Devonian period. Yeah, I don't know. So next slide, I just got pictures showing placoderms. Okay, so here's my placoderms. You can see these heavy, heavy hard plates. Here's my spiny fish. Okay. So these early fishes were replaced by sharks and bony fishes during several mass extinctions, like the Devon period. So now moving on to the fishes that have cartilage as their skeleton, which makes them lighter, conricthes. So more streamlined body, paired fins, flexible skeleton. Basically, they are superior swimmers, which also makes them very good predators. So sharks, skates, and rays make up the conricthes. Teeth evolved from rough scales on their body, and you'll see that with your dogfish shark, just that sandpaper feeling of its skin. They also have a...
Oh, it's covered by the sharks.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm not... I promise you this is not on the test. But they have a lateral line system. So you'll see that on the dogfish and the perch. Just a line of sensory cells, and they kind of use it to sense vibrations. So this is the lateral line cartoon diagram right here. And you zoom in and you can see they have sensory cells that detect vibrations. Reproduction, eggs fertilized internally. So you'll see on your dogfish shark, if you have a male, claspers, how they help grasp the female during the process of copulation. And then the eggs develop within the female, and then they give live birth. So,
God,
sorry. Yeah. Teeth. Okay, I don't like this slide because it just freaks me out. So these are actual pictures of teeth of some fish here, and there's just different dentation. But this one right here just freaks me out because I look at it, I'm like, oh my gosh, they look like human teeth. So I'm just gonna move on. Okay, bony fish dominate waters. So they evolved around the same time as sharks, but they took a slightly different evolutionary road. So their skeleton's made of bone, which means that they're stronger, and you can, get larger in size, stronger muscles. But there's a problem. Bone is heavier than cartilage. So they had to evolve a way to stay afloat better, and that is with a swim bladder. So the swim bladder is a sac that gets filled with gases, and it helps them be more buoyant. So sharks lack a swim bladder. So they have to continue to move through the water or else they sink. I'm sure some of that has been disproven though. Like they said, sharks never sleep because if they did, it'd be bad for them. But they have observed sharks sleeping, so I don't know. But they do lack a swim bladder. You'll see that their liver is extremely large, and they do secrete an oil, and oil doesn't mix with water, so that shark oil helps keep them buoyant. And yeah, it smells really, really bad. So we'll make sure we're gloved, and that swim oil, just don't get it on you. Just try not to get it on you. Okay. So the swim bladder is an independent organ, and it gets filled with nitrogen and oxygen gases. So just some more on swim bladders. Here's a diagram of a perch, and you'll see the swim bladder when you dissect it. That's the swim bladder right there. Okay, a gill cover. The thing that covers the gills is the operculum. It's a very hard plate. It's on each side of the head, not the heat, each side of the head. So it will flex, kind of go in and out to pump water over the gills. When the mouth is open, it closes it, and then when the mouth is closed, then they open. So that's why fishes like open and close their mouths, is to move the upper colon. So just a diagram showing that. All right, so there are two major fishes of the bony groups, and we call bony fish coelacanths. Ray-finned fishes and the lobed-finned fishes. So ray-finned fishes means that their fins are very, very bony. I mean, they just, the perch is a ray-finned fish. There's no muscles in those fins. Lobed fin fishes, we see a little bit more muscular lobe of some sort, and then a core of bones in that fin. And it is from the lobed fin fishes that we see the transition from ocean or water to land because of the bones present in these fins. All right, review questions. In which of the following animal groups did the jaw evolved? C, yes, fishes. Which of the following is not a key characteristic of fishes?
E.
It is E. Select the best representative of the class of fish from which amphibians almost certainly evolved from.
C.
E.
D, the lobed fin on land. Okay. The blank of the bony fish evolves to counter the effects of increased bone density. C, the swim bladder. Wow, we flew through that. Okay. Do you guys want more work time to finish chapter 34 guided notes? Okay.
I gotta start that.